Get ready to quit the build.
Here we go!
The QTB crew is rounding up all the gaming news and hot topics of the week with a little extra something. And here are your hosts, Bruno, Brad, and Nick.
What it do? You're listening to the QTB podcast. I'm your host, Bruno, and with me are the boys of QTB, our co-hosts, Nick and Brad.
Oh, there we go. There we go. The crowd goes nuts. It's episode 89. And I gotta tell you guys, I mean, I have been having just one heck of a week in the gaming space. I've been having a lot of fun going on through the kind of backlog of Game Pass games. Been getting my Yakuza on. Been playing Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is it's a fun game. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of wacky Sega antics happening there. You know, one moment you're trying to bust up the mafia, the next you're out there playing Pokemon. They literally have a Pokemon like parody where you have to gotta dispatch them all, where you gotta kill and catch different Yakuza agents.
What?
Yeah. Game is
How
super
about
serial.
that? You know, I even have one of these in the back pocket just for my opener for Brad. I'm going to say, go, Brad!
You gotta be on the video podcast. I'm sorry if you're listening, but you just missed a face. You missed a face. He was ready for action. That's getting clipped.
Clip it, make it a meme.
That's getting
yeah. Brad just got up his Pokeball. He's still sleeping. No, it's good to be here, guys. 89, episode 89. Any 89 people out there? You're 89 babies. This episode's for you.
Hey, how about I totally missed the 87 one, but I know that's a good year. That was my year. Nick, you were 88, right?
Yep, that was me.
But your favorite number is 86. And then
Very
Brad,
close.
what about you?
88 as well. I missed it.
Oh,
so that's
see,
why
there
I'm
we
calling
go.
out the 89s today. So
Yep. About to get into the 90s. Oh, everyone's favorite.
Oh, I mean, we just played
You know
20
what's great
minutes of
about
90s
90s?
commercials. Yeah.
all our Nostalgia Vault episodes for our Patreon subscribers is all about the 90s. So,
Oh!
hey.
Unbelievable. It's not even time for the Patreon plug. This man is getting it done. Taking care of business. He's playing the song, the password jingle. I'm not gonna do it yet. It's not time. But that's okay. Thank you.
We're
There we
still
go.
at the opening.
We're still in the pre-show.
What do we got? What do we
It's a
got
slow
for him
news
today?
week. It's a slow news week. We've got time for this. Trust me.
We do.
Which is, so we do know that tomorrow there's going to be a Nintendo Direct that was announced. There is some speculation that there could be Mario Kart. The new Mario Kart game could be announced. We know it's in production, so this could be their chance. Aside
Lots
from
of
that,
rumors have been
any
flying
predictions?
around. I think that the Mario Kart's a good solid call. We've already seen some rumors and some leaks about that, about things that they wanted to do. I heard that one of the original plans was to have subterranean levels where you could actually go underneath the map and there would be a whole other course as well. You can actually even see the drill cart that they were going to add in the arcade version of Mario Kart. So if you look at Mario Kart DX, there is actually a drill that they added to the production. And so it was eventually going to be added to the game, or something they wanted to do. So not only could you fly around with like the parasail, but they were also looking at doing something like that. Might be interesting to see a new mechanic added to Mario Kart. I think we need something to spice it up, right? Like it's getting a little stale.
I don't know. For me, I'm excited about seeing more with that new Kirby game that's supposed to come out next month. I've always been a Kirby fan, so seeing what that's going to look like a little bit more, a month before launch, I think that's going to really, wet my palate and see what's coming on that side with Nintendo. So.
Yeah, the first like fully 3D open world Kirby game we've ever had. It's completely breaking the mold of what Kirby's supposed to be. And I mean, they were showing that the fishing mini game recently, and just kind of some of the chill things you can do. I'm all in for it, man. I'm going to be there day one. So it seems like Nintendo's been doing well recently, especially with the Pokemon Arceus. It's been getting good reviews. At first, people weren't sure about the graphics, but I think the big shift has been people are realizing now that Pokemon really belongs outside of the turn-based realm that it's been kind of banished to, because that's what most people have known. And having that world that's got real Pokemon out and about and you can see them and interact with them in their natural habitat, and they can mess with you in different ways. It's really cool. I've been watching a lot of our network streamer Kung Fu Penguin playing that game, which, by the way, guys, a huge shout out to Kung Fu Penguin. Big announcement. He has been sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Seriously, yeah, and we're so happy for him. It's a big deal. He's got a sponsored stream coming up this Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to check that out, head on over to twitch.tv/Kung Fu Penguin. We'll have the link in the show notes, as well as the exclusive link that he has for you to play Raid Shadow Legends. Again, just a fantastic news for him. We're super happy for him. Well,
yeah, I mean, I've been watching some of his clips and streams from the new Pokemon game, and he got a shiny the other day, man, and it's cool to see how those even pop up, and you can see them, like you said, in the wild and interact with them. But even to see a shiny pop up, man, they're still there. The odds are low, but they're still there. So,
the whole actually turn to these open world games that we're starting to see is really changing the way that we approach video games. I mean, and I think it's a model that is here to stay. I'm not saying that I think that all video games will go down this path, but I think it's important to know that you can have a successful game that maybe isn't, an RPG per se, that's maybe more relaxed, like Halo Infinite, or even Forza Horizon 5, where you've got these great open world mechanics built into a game that's already available. I mean, we're seeing it more and more, and I think that having it in a Pokemon format is just perfect. That's exactly what we've been waiting for. This is like, 25 years in the making, right? Like, so
yeah,
that's important.
Yeah, it's kind of that all-important step towards kind of the Pokemon MMO that we've always dreamed of, and just having it in that kind of environment. Yeah, it's something special. So yeah, definitely check out Kung Fu Penguin's stream. And again, congratulations on that sponsorship from Raid Shadow Legends. Well, guys, aside from that Nintendo Direct, and we'll definitely be talking about it here in the coming months. Look for a live react in the coming months. Yeah, maybe in March, maybe in April. I don't know. We'll get around to it.
We'll get around to it.
Yeah. In the coming days, look for a live react video from us, which may not air live as it's on there, but you'll get to see our reactions to a lot of the big news coming down the pipeline in the Nintendo space. Well, guys, our big story for today, and it is coming from videogameschronicle.com, and this is talking about the game developer Platinum Games, basically talking about how Scalebound. We got to talk about Scalebound. Okay, yeah. we got to provide some context here. So I'm going to take you back to, this goes about to around the time of the Xbox One release, around 2011, 2012. The game had been in production for a while. If you don't remember Scalebound, it was going to be this single-player action RPG. You had dragons that you could control simultaneously alongside your character and kind of issue commands to the dragon.
Yeah, he even ran around with what was it? He had like a Walkman or something like that, like an MP. You know what I mean? He had like music and headphones playing. So they even made it seem modern, right? Where you could just... Sega and those types of games have the best soundtracks. We were just talking about that the other day with Fantasy Online. Yeah. Like, the soundtracks are bopping. So to be able to go around as this dude with dragons to a bopping soundtrack, I mean, sold. And this is something that Xbox needed, right, Nick?
It really was, because this was set to be kind of one of the very few exclusives that the Xbox was going to have. That was, kind of an Eastern game, right? And this has always been the big divide, and one of the big differentiators between Microsoft and Sony is that Sony has its roots in Japan, and we're in kind of the heart of where the video game industry began. And so, the Xbox really has always had a tough time trying to get their footing in that Eastern market, which isn't nearly as big as it used to be, right? It really dwarfs the larger global gaming market, but still is an important kind of market, to kind of niche market at this point to capture. And that was exactly how they were going to do it. Was they had teamed up with Platinum Games to have them develop this game, and it would be published by Xbox Game Studios. And, it was going to be, I think it was set up for like a 2017 release. It kept getting delayed. And then eventually the game just got canceled outright. And there's a lot of reasons for that. This story, though, is talking about a recent conversation that the new president of Platinum Games has had. There was a changing of the guard. This is also a recent story that popped up, that they have a new person in charge now. The president is Atsushi Inaba, and of course, Vice President Hideki Kamayo, who is notorious for his just what's the word I'm looking here for, Bruno? Is it brash or just off the cuff? The guy is bombastic, right?
He's an asshole.
The beep didn't work.
Yeah, well, you.
Yeah, no, okay, that one did work. Yeah.
I just had to admit it.
That's a live soundboard, folks.
Way to self-censor there. Yeah.
He is. He really is. Like, he kind of just has this, like, I know better than you ego. And obviously he doesn't know better, because if he did, there would be a Scalebound game for all of us. The biggest issue I have with him is what he said regarding, the who's at fault, right? He said, I think both sides are to blame. And while I think that he's right to some extent, to say both sides are to blame makes it seem like it was split down the middle, like 50-50. And this is probably more like 90-10, his fault. He doesn't want to admit that it's his fault, but seeing as I don't speak Spanish and he doesn't really like people who speak English, I don't think we're ever going to really talk to each other. So I can full well and comfort say that I think he was 100% wrong. And I think the mentality of Japanese style culture is it's something that I mentioned in our chat basically before the show, which was as long as it takes. That's kind of their motto, right? And that serves really well when it comes to like Wagyu beef, amazing. Some of the things that they produce, they've got a cantaloupe that takes essentially a full year to produce. They give them out as gifts. They only produce one cantaloupe per tree, so that way all of the, nutrients and whatnot go into this one cantaloupe, and they make these, amazing, one-off tens of thousands of dollar fruit that they give out as gifts, right? Something that you never see in a Western culture. You'd never see that. So that same mentality of, well, as long as it takes, goes into their game development too. And that's an issue. That's an issue when you're trying to adopt new technology like a new Unreal Engine. That's an issue when you've got an infrastructure of multiple game systems that it has to function on. And then on top of that, function for years after the fact, because we know that the forwards capability and compatibility of Xbox is important to them. It might not be to PlayStation, but you see where that's got them, right? Like they're in this position where they can't update their games or whatever. So, while the mentality of as long as it takes is great for something like Nintendo Switch, that's going to be using the same archaic, system to produce something, us in the Western and the real world are all dealing with an infrastructure that Microsoft knows way more about than Platinum Games, right? Like, if there's one thing that Microsoft knows, it's infrastructure. And so to not understand that and to even admit that he was irresponsible and too irresponsible to work with them makes me question why Microsoft should even want to continue to work with him in the future for what he said, the bombastic nature of his attitude towards everyone that questions him is not one of collaboration. So in the end, you really have to wonder, who are we kowtowing here? Who are we playing the odds to here? And is it worth it to really get that Eastern market, right? Because we're already starting to see more and more Eastern cultures pick up the Xbox in response. So I think it's something that's something they looked for in the past. With the Xbox One release, they, obviously wanted to breach into that market. But I think now it's not as big of a deal to Xbox. I think they know their path, know where they're going, and it doesn't revolve around Scalebound. Brad, Do your worst. I
Good
know
luck
you've
following
been
that,
thinking
brother.
and stewing. He's been stewing here. I'm waiting.
Well, can we just say that Bruno's on fire tonight? I mean, he just,
Seriously.
like, dropped a bombshell, went from Wagyu beef to like, yeah, you know. I mean, you had me at Wagyu beef, so I'm kind of like, you know.
Yeah.
So, but here's what we've been very critical on this show for weeks and about acquisitions and other flop games and game releases because they've been rushed. And now I'm hearing you say on the flip side of the coin, Bruno, that you are critical of folks taking too long. So without me going any further, my first challenge to you then would be, what's the right time? Because obviously you're saying things are being rushed and being released and they're not fully done. And then we're criticizing flopped releases. And now you're saying, oh, well, this is an example of where game developers take way too long. And so what is the happy medium then?
Happy medium, I'm glad you asked, Brad. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm going to get into this studious response here because it's important, and I think it all revolves around marketing. I own a marketing company, Pearson Limited, where we do these types of releases and look into this type of marketing aspect, right? And I got news for you. When you come out to the public and say, this is going to be the future of Xbox, this is going to be a future exclusive game, here it is in development, right? Here is actual gameplay footage. I think at that point, you've already set expectations. So I think it really comes down to when you garner marketing support for a video game and how upfront you are with your audience in that respect. I could easily bring up Hello Games with the No Man's Sky debacle. It was not in any state ready to be released. They marketed the hell out of it way before it ever should have seen the light of anyone's eyes, right? It should have never ever come into existence or been presented at any E3 platform or any marketing standpoint whatsoever with nothing to back it up. And then to release the game, essentially be forced to release the game because of these time constraints that you put yourself in when it wasn't ready is completely your fault in that respect. Now, you're right. There are times when you need to garner marketing support in order to finish a game or in order to continue development with something. And I think that that's something that Microsoft gave them. They gave them the support. They gave them the money. But this being a studio that was used to the infrastructure that Nintendo has, which is quite archaic, they weren't willing to bend and move towards a future that Xbox could really see with them in their ecosystem. And I think that's the difference, right? There's a difference between saying like the game isn't ready to be released. Halo Infinite is a perfect example, right? The game was not ready to be released when they initially slated it to be released a year ago. It really wasn't ready to be released now, but they decided to go ahead and go through with that because at a certain point you have to pull the trigger. I remember something that's one of my favorite lessons I ever learned, and I've probably told you guys this before, but a professor had two classes in which they were supposed to create pottery. He taught one class to not stop until they perfected a pot. He also told the other class to just make as many pots as they could. Didn't matter what they looked like, just get them done. By the end of the class that was, supposed to create the perfect pot could barely get one finished and get it out the door. Whereas the class who was told to just put it out there, just get it done. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. They went on to create better pots and actually finish those things. So in that respect there, that age-old wisdom, sometimes, yes, it is best to just push it out the door and see what your audience is going to do and how they're going to react. But that comes at the cost of collaboration. That comes at the cost of knowing who your partner is and making sure that they understand their role and you understand your role. So I know that was a lot, and I don't.
I mean, Go ahead, Brad. I got nothing at this point.
No, I was going to say what I would say, Bruno, and I hear you. So that makes me question then, whose fault is it really? I mean, obviously it sounds like from an identity or even kind of a foundational standpoint, maybe the pairing for that development wasn't good, right? Yeah. So from the get-go, it just ideologies didn't mesh, right? Even, from, and looking back to your commentary about Japanese culture, Eastern culture, there's a lot of that, we're not going to show you something half-baked. We're going to show you the final, tip-top prime product that's ready to go, right?
Yeah.
And so, where we're, here it's a very about teasing, right? Teasing what's to come. Here's a preview, and that builds expectation, builds excitement, but it also then, in my opinion, can rush development, right? Because now all of a sudden now there's this need for something sooner than really if you didn't even tell anyone about it. You could surprise them. And, it's kind of like, what was it, Beyonce, who just dropped an album unexpectedly and it did fantastic because no one knew it was coming?
Apex Legends would have been a very apt correlation as well.
Yep.
So I'm just thinking about,
nice.
We bridge pop culture here, right? I'm trying to pull examples
of course.
But Apex Legends is another good one, right? So, I mean, that's another model where we see that even if you don't have that marketing, games and albums can be widely successful. So, I wonder if that could have been an alternative that wasn't considered. Like now, if the marketing was this is going to be an exclusive for the new system, and there's so much more tied to that expectation wise, that's really where I think the flop is. Yes, you can say the ideologies of both, Platinum Games and Microsoft probably didn't mesh, but at the end of the day, that was exacerbated by a poor timing on marketing and building those expectations and hype, which then ultimately led to its downfall, right? So,
I think
and I expect that,
coupled
and you
with
can
mismanagement.
Well, yeah, but you can read that. I mean, I think Phil Spencer said there, shooting down any rumors. There's nothing at this time that's saying that we're relaunching this development, but we have no ill will or hard feelings towards Platinum Games. So there obviously was something that happened that wasn't really, I think it was just a amalgam of poor timing and choices that led to an overhype and a flop. And rather than release it and it be something that was a complete disaster, they said, let's just pull the plug because they're respecting, the culture or the identity of that game developer. That's my take. I mean,
yeah, you're right. There was a culture clash, 100%. It's important to understand the context of the generation because so much has changed with Xbox, with the Xbox One generation, and now with the Xbox Series S and X. Because you have to remember that back in the Xbox 360 days when this was first announced, this is when Scalebound was first announced, it was going to be an Xbox One exclusive upon the release of the platform around 2013. And what ends up happening is, in the Western market, we really were very action-oriented back then. RPGs really, you would play them, right? But you didn't associate them with an Xbox console. It still very much was a Nintendo thing. It was a PlayStation thing. This game was an action RPG. It was absolutely a hybrid. And what ended up happening towards the end of the development cycle for this before it was canceled was, they're developing it on the RPG side. They're going heavy on the RPG elements because that's what Platinum Games is well known for. Yeah. And they have other games in their arsenal, modern games like Astral Chain, but also Bayonetta, Nier Automata, and even other IPs they've had in their belt, like they made a TMNT game. They made a Star Fox game, okay? So they've got some experience, but what happened was the Western market, right? Phil Spencer and crew is marketing this game as like an action game, but they're like, well, wait a second, it's really more of an RPG. And so there was that clash. And Phil Spencer came out afterwards and said, that not releasing that game was pretty much the low point of his career. And you look at where Phil is now on the tippy top of the gaming industry. And that's for him to say that definitively carries a lot of weight to say this is the lowest point of my career of this game that was supposed to be this huge blockbuster for us that just didn't come through at all. To hype it up and to say that we can't release it is bad. And said the biggest lesson he learned from that is don't announce a game until you have a believable business plan to release it that you believe and that your audience is going to believe. And he's definitely taken that to heart.
Definitely. So, and I think that's the biggest thing to learn from all of this. Like, I think it's the biggest thing to learn from, I did a video when I returned to YouTube for a brief time and was talking about video games. The same thing that we're doing now, right? I had this moment where I had a viral video go where me criticizing the marketing plan of Hello Games and No Man's Sky. It's what got me back into YouTube, right? That success. And then, for us to be talking about it now is just, full circle, right? Like we're still dealing with that same thing. And so for them to, it's good to know that it wasn't just on the PlayStation side, right? Like, Scalebound was a flop. I would say that No Man's Sky was a flop at first, although they have had a tremendous redemption story, right? Like No Man's Sky is exactly what they promised on delivery from day one now. Many, 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 many years later. And I can only hope that more games like this don't see the light of day before they're ready, right? Like I think they should remain in the dark, and the marketing shouldn't come out until you've got something that is a substantial game. We've seen it before with The Last Guardian. The Last Guardian, they showed that one clip for years and years. It was supposed to be the groundbreaking PS3 game, and it didn't come out until the very tail end of PlayStation 4's life. I think it was actually even supposed to be may have been PlayStation 2. It was announced.
Wow. Yeah.
So a very, very long time. And it's time and time again, we've seen this, right? Where something has been announced too early and tried to gain hype around it. And there are situations that happen, the pandemic being one of them. But at the end of the day, you have control over when you announce something or release something, and doing it under, doing it in a way that, essentially is a fraud.
Yeah.
Of a thing is not something you want. We're already seeing that in issues with that new documentary and whatnot that's coming out, The Dropout, right? With the telehealth, or what was it? The at-home health machines, right? With the testing of the blood and all that stuff.
Yeah. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Like, we'll just fake a demo, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We've gotten so used to seeing that on the Xbox, PlayStation, stage, right? Like how many games have you come up there and they're like pretending to play a game, and you're like, they're sitting there playing it.
Yeah.
And the controller's not even on.
Oh man. That's how you get them.
They're just like, yeah, this is amazing. This is this is how everyone holds a controller, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see it like this is.
Yeah, reverse playing. It's a speedrunning tactic for sure. That's what all the pros do.
Exactly.
But I get, okay. My question to both of you then, and maybe Nick, you've got one in mind, or Bruno, since you're on a roll tonight. Give me a game, whether it was tied to a console release or not, that you would say is the best execution of the right balance of advertisement, hype, marketing, and release, and how, and like, do you have one that you say start to finish, you go, that, why isn't everyone copying that?
Hello Kitty Island Adventure for the
that's
DS.
Good. I was going to go Skatebird, but you got me there.
Skatebird. I hate to keep going back to it, but I would say Apex Legends. I really think that was an amazing release. They got the release. They just basically came out and said, hey, here's the game. It's out. They simultaneously had a YouTube and an advertising strategy behind Apex Legend. So there was a marketing campaign that went out socially, and they hired and got influencers to play the game at release, right? Like they had huge names from Twitch that were all simultaneously playing the game. The game is still going strong. It's still one of the, considered one of the top battle royale games out there. I think as far as a marketing release, game release goes, you can't do better than that. I would be hard pressed to find a game that does better than that. A free to play game that's released all of a sudden with no hype behind it, has a great marketing campaign, and then finally gets influencers behind the whole scenario to help prop it up and showcase what the game is. That's a win.
There you go. I mean, Bruno, you are batting 1,000 today, brother. You have got it on lock. I don't know. You had your Wheaties this morning or something. Or your tricks.
I had Captain Crunch this morning.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that in the pre-show.
I had
Wow, that's brain food?
Yeah, apparently.
Unbelievable.
I usually don't have any breakfast, so maybe that's the key, right?
That could be
Crunch, that's
Yeah.
the key.
Well, I'll tell you.
The placebo effect from Captain Crunch.
Part of this balanced breakfast. And speaking of getting hungry, I think Mr. Grove Games summed up your first rant very well. He says, you learned all kinds of things on the QTB podcast. I'm hungry for cantaloupe now.
Yeah.
You and me you and me both, Mr. Grove Games. And speaking of which, if you're hungry for bonus content, have we got a deal for you? We're talking about our Patreon. Ooh, nice. Haven't played that in a while. There it is.
Segue.
So, patreon.com/quitthebuild has got everything that you're looking for with bonus content and a great way to support our network to boot. We have got all sorts of great stuff on here. We've got insights into our posts. We got early access to our Gotta Watch episodes. The list goes on and on. We have 2 episodes we released in January, infomercials and PBS shows. And we're going to be doing a very special rom-com episode. You heard me right. Rom-coms we're going to be doing here coming up in February with one of our very first supporters, our very first Patreon supporter, Nick. That's going to be a lot of fun. So be sure to check it out again, patreon.com/quitthebuild. Thanks as always to our Patreon supporters like Nick, Epicapture Productions, The Dudist Monk, Indie Gamiacs, Alan Abadessa, Mr. Grove Games, The Intergalactic Pinecone, and our newest QTB Plus supporter, Matt.Bat. Oh yeah. Woo! Appreciate you guys and gals. Woo! Oh yeah. Man.
Love it. Love to see it.
Timed that out perfectly.
Hey, and look who loves some Captain Crunch too. It's our network streamer Kung Fu Penguin.
Oh man. You know, 2 things that man loves: Captain Crunch and Raid Shadow Legends. I tell you.
Yeah.
Oh man, I tell you. Oh, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is also a banger.
Yeah.
That's also a win. Like if you see that in the cupboard, you've won.
That's
You've
some
won
top
them.
tier cereal, some top cereal, if you will.
Oh!
Oh my
Whoa!
gosh. Go ahead, hit me with it. There it is. Fantastic. Oh man, well we've got quite the story here, and I think it's a good segue into kind of a tech conversation. We've already had the NFT talk, okay? Now we're gonna have the metaverse talk. It's time, okay? So Bandai Namco, the big news again from VideoGamesChronicle.com, a great website by the way. I love the way they set up their news articles. Is that they have announced that they're making their own $130 million IP metaverse. You heard that right. They have detailed their plan starting in April of 2022 through March of 2025, that they are going to be basically rolling out this metaverse concept where they're taking all of their IPs and just jamming them into this kind of virtual space. Like most conversations about the metaverse, it's super vague, and we don't exactly quite know what they mean by it. But I'll tell you before we get into your thoughts on this, guys, is that, you know, Bandai Namco, they have a lot of IPs under their belt that a lot of people don't give them credit for. I think it's one of those developers that they have such a wide range of games, but you don't always accredit those games to them, right? Of course, Namco getting its start in the arcade, so you have those classic IPs like Pac-Man, even more obscure ones like Dig Dug, Pole Position, all that kind of good stuff. But then you've even got the big ones, Tekken, Soul Calibur, Project Cars, Dragon Ball Z, they've got the IP rights to, right? They make all sorts of Dragon Ball Z games. Even more fun and obscure games like my personal favorite, Katamari Damacy, because rolling up the entire globe into a ball and shooting it into space is the kind of dystopian future I want to live in.
Yeah. They even have that drum game, right?
Oh, yeah, Taiko. Yeah, that just came out on Game Pass.
Yeah, that just came out on Game Pass. I've been playing that on my controller. It's not as fun. I'm a drummer. No. Like, you might be able to see the drum set behind me if you're watching us live, but it's still a lot of fun. I mean, you can play Last Christmas on there and, you know, send somebody to the... Well, actually not send them to the Whamageddon because technically it's not the Wham version. It's not the Wham version. So
it is on there, Last Christmas. Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah,
Covers don't count.
So it's... Yeah, you can. That's how you can get your Last Christmas fix without going to Wham. Yep.
This guy, he knows the rules.
What's up?
But yeah, so this story, you know, they're basically talking about how, and again, it's hard to go into specifics because what they're saying is in this IP metaverse, they're anticipating virtual spaces that will enable customers to enjoy a wide range of entertainment on all of their across all of their IPs, as well as frameworks that leverage Bandai Namco's distinctive strengths to fuse physical products and venues with digital elements. And I'll tell you, it sounds exciting on paper. You know, the news just broke it, in case you missed it, that there was an announcement that I think Meta in just one day, like 1 hour, it was one of the hugest individual stock crashes by just overall value wiped out in stock history. That Meta lost $232 billion after a just disastrous call. Where I think the stock dropped in price by like $100, down from like the mid 300s to the mid 200s. Just because, you know, it seems like the social media platforms like TikTok and others, we won't go too much into the business side, but they really did kind of lean into the metaverse angle, right? They literally renamed themselves Meta. Now the Oculus Quest is the Meta Quest. And, you know, when you know that they're kind of spearheading this metaverse thing, I think I like hearing more about these smaller publishers that have their own IP sets that are like, well, we're going to make our own metaverse. Because I think you guys would be in agreement that just about anybody we want to see make a metaverse other than Meta itself, right, Bruno?
Well, the only metaverse I think in video game world that is obviously not bound by any reality is Fortnite. Right? You're never going to compete with the fact that like they've got every IP ever in their arsenal right now. So it's just a matter of time before we see Pac-Man running around with a gun or something like that. I mean, that would be cool. Or even a Pac-Man like game variant, right? Where you turn into the ghost at one point and boom, flip the switch. I think the mechanics of these are right there. Like we've already got some bangers of video games. So, and I don't know why we wouldn't want to see a Tekken, Soul Calibur, Project Cars mix-up, guys. Okay? Now entering the arena, is that a 1993 Buick LeSabre? Oh, it is.
You had to get your favorite joke in there. He's been sitting on that for a while.
I did the joke in the pre-show, but it was a 1987 Toyota Tercel. So I switched it up for the audience. They know.
That's true. That's true.
Quickly, if we look to our comments here, our good friend Terry, aka Dudus Monk, you said they don't have a Bruno skin in Fortnite yet, so we're not there yet all the way.
That's the long-term play. It's the only reason why we started this podcast. Bruno wants his own skin in Fortnite.
So,
yeah.
But
please. He says, please.
You totally have like a symbol back bling for sure.
What a do shirt, definitely.
But that would be it.
But Mr. Grove Games already bought the Bruno NFT, so I don't know. Yeah. I mean, anybody can make one, so you're probably out there somewhere.
Probably, right? I'd love to know what the exchange rate for that is, right?
What's the conversion rate of Stanley Nichols to Bruno bucks?
Raspberries.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man!
But my hot take on this is that if we can double back, this is kind of throwing shade at what we talked about last time, but man, I feel like, you know, Sony should have bought Bandai Namco. I mean, they've got all the titles and they're investing in an IP metaverse. And all Sony got for almost $4 billion was Destiny. I mean,
a cross-platform game.
We had that big conversation earlier today because there was an article regarding Sony's acquisition of Bungie, and an analyst basically said that they overpaid. They think they overpaid for it, and I think that's a fair. That's my position. I think it was vastly overpaid for.
If I can get my own IP metaverse for $130 million, I mean, yeah, then just using that as a reference and then throwing in all those other titles, I mean,
look at all the brawls we've seen lately, right? Like we've got the Nickelodeon brawl. I mean, Super Smash is Smash is just the icon of these brawl type games. And there's even things like Brawlhalla, a very kind of not well known. Isn't that by Ubisoft? Does Ubisoft do Brawlhalla?
I don't remember who made it, but I know there's also the Warner Brothers game that they just announced that they're kind of IP battle royale game, right? You're having Batman and other iconic characters all just basically anybody within the Warner Brothers umbrella is getting thrown into the same game and being made to fight each other. Bugs
And
freaking
that is
Bunny.
Ubisoft. That is Ubisoft. So yeah, I mean, and right now with Brawlhalla, it's really interesting because they constantly are adding new character skins to the already established characters. Right. So it's not like it'd be like if you could go in and use, I'm gonna use Mario, but you could swap him out for Luigi, you could swap him out for Waluigi or whatever. They'd have the same mechanics. They kind of have that too, right? Where they added the Ninja Turtles. They just added Street Fighter characters into Brawlhalla. So we're seeing more and more companies really dive in to their IPs and look at them and say, how can we combine these, right? Fortnite's doing it. All these other IPs are doing it. Why not us? Why does everything have to exist in its own bubble? Why can't we cross platform and create a Venn diagram of awesome content and characters? I'm down for it. I want to see a Pac-Man, Project Cars mashup.
Yeah.
Like in Pixels, right? Remember in Pixels? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all the classic arcade titles were there, right? Here's my take on it, and here's what I think they're trying to imply with this. And I hope it's right. Maybe it's just my bias of what I'd like to see. I miss the arcade era, and I'm not talking about this Dave and Buster's nonsense or when you go in and you pine over the games of yesteryear and the retro arcades that exist. I'm talking about the arcade scene when the games that were in the arcade were cutting edge. I'm talking about the heyday of Soul Calibur 2. I'm talking about the heyday of Tekken, where people were gathered around machines. Yeah, definitely. We're gathered around these machines and forming relationships and bonds over video games in a way that just doesn't happen in an online setting.
Did you ever put your quarter on the machine, Nick?
I was a DDR player. I got next. Of course you did.
Of course you did.
I got next.
Yeah, that's just a little clue for all of our gamers out there. OG gamer, if you ever want to play a game and you see somebody else is playing machine, just go up and stick a quarter right on the machine, and it kind of lets them know I got next. I got next play on this. Yeah, it is. It is a power play.
Is it still a quarter? Is it still a quarter? Or I feel like you got to stack like $5 worth of quarters now with inflation, right? You
just need one quarter. It's just one quarter to let them know. You don't want to stick that much up there. Somebody come up and swipe it.
Correct. True. Yeah, you got to protect your investment. That's right.
I'll take that.
Yeah. But no, what I want to see is a return to that. And I'm hoping that what they're implying by this is that they do take a lot of their popular IPs, both old and new, to create a kind of a VR scenario where you are playing these arcade games. Some of my favorite VR experiences are one that make you feel like you're in an arcade, right? And you've got the cabinet right in front of you to scale.
Oh, yeah.
And you can use your controller to play those games. I would love to see kind of a VR chat equivalent of an arcade with licensed games from a company like it's called Bandai Namco Arcade, that you can go in. It's an actual space, right? Maybe it has instances so it doesn't get overcrowded, but you can chat with other gamers, watch them play their games, and you have to wait your turn. You have to actually wait your turn and watch other people play a game. We talk a lot about, and Meta's been trying to do this with the social experiences, but I think what they're missing is the content itself. I remember going into Meta's, whether it's Horizon Worlds or whatever it's called, app in Oculus Quest, just to say that I've been in the metaverse and I know what it's all about, right? I got to be hip with the times. I get vertigo when I do it, but I was still there. And it was cool at first. Like I got put into a lobby with a bunch of random people from all over the world. I had someone walk up to me and say, parlez-vous français? And I had to be like, no, food is fa. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, I tried.
Mel, de l'enfant, de la fin, c'est la mort, mel.
Wow, this is why I needed the soundboard.
Ratatouille. I'll have some ratatouille. That's all I know.
But yeah, when I went into the actual curated experiences that they had, it was essentially just like theaters where you would watch YouTube videos, right? Like playlists that they had put up, like watch the ballet of the Nutcracker. No one cared. And so what ends up happening is you've got the infrastructure. Yeah, but you don't have the experiences, and that's where Fortnite and other players, I think, can step up by saying, we've already got we've already got the content, we've got the experiences. You just need to show up in our ecosystem. And I think that's what they could do best here. I would love to see them go back to their roots in a metaverse way. I would happily dive into VR to just hang out in an arcade and play some games with some friends.
I mean, it's definitely something that's I could see a future in, especially in the age of COVID, right? Where we're, I mean, even though things are starting to lighten up a bit, it's still a very, very hard thing for arcades to come by. For you to see an arcade out in the wild is still one of those double take moments, right? Where you got to turn your head twice to see, is that an arcade going? And that's one great thing about, I will say, the area in which I live in Portland, Oregon, where there are so many arcades around and you can go in there and still put in a quarter and play Mortal Kombat 2 or something, or Turtles in Time or whatever it may be. And I think you're right, Nick. I think that arcades are not, I think they're in this weird limbo where people are trying to kill them off, but a hardcore group of gamers are saying, no, we want to preserve this, right? There's so many good things. And look at something like, what is it? The Halo Fire Team or what is that? Yeah. That arcade experience specifically for Halo that was developed just a few years ago. Mm-hmm. That's hitting Dave and Buster's everywhere, right? Yeah. So I think that you're still seeing AAA title development, as it were, for these gaming experiences. It just happens to be, where can I go to play them, right? And having a virtual reality room would be pretty awesome.
Yeah. I think VR is kind of a way to bring the arcade into modern day. I feel like the people who are fighting, you talk about the demographic who wants to keep them alive. It's us. It's the people who grew up as kids going to the arcade because those are where the games were. You stood in front of a machine and moved a joystick and hit two buttons, or you got in front of one that was like Cruising USA and you sat in the seat and you turned the steering wheel and you put your foot on the pedal. Yeah. Or you played, oh God, what was that game where you you literally held a rifle and you were like shooting the targets and it was like
siphon
a sensor.
filter?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about that a few episodes ago. Siphon filter, the one where you got to look into the scope.
It was pretty cool.
And there was a screen in the scope. Oh, that was amazing.
So you think about that, but all of that has gone away. Kids today have no idea or recollection or experience of playing those games before they've gotten immersed in cell phones and mobile gaming and the current console and PC gaming industry. So they have no idea or appreciation for arcades. And so that's why they're dying off. But there are fans and a demographic like us who still see value and enjoyment in that. And that's why I think you're seeing a lot of these arcades now shift from being a kid-centric environment to an adult-centric environment, right? I actually I visited one in Portland when I visited a couple years ago that it was an adult-themed arcade and bar. So you could go buy adult, have cocktails, beer, wine, and you could still go around and play quarter games. And they have one of 6 remaining KISS pinball machines that you can still play for like 75 cents. And it's like a limited edition, hard to find. It's got Gene Simmons up on this, the front. But now I feel like that's where the market is right now before we get into VR is make them adult themed, serve some alcohol, serve some food, let adults go, have it a way for them
know
to
your
check
demographic
out and know your demographic and have fun rather than it being something now where kids 5 to 15 want to go and spend their afternoons or their birthday party there.
We got Chuck E. Cheese, right? We got those. We don't need another Chuck E. Cheese.
No.
We need more Dave and Buster's everywhere, but
maybe a Discovery Zone. Maybe.
Oh,
that's where kids want to be.
Discovery Zone, man, I gotta tell you, if you didn't have your birthday party at Discovery Zone back in the 90s, then you weren't having a birthday party. They had that mini roller coaster in there and that whole huge jungle gym that was definitely not safe for kids to be in. But it was the 90s and we didn't care. We threw caution to the wind and lived reckless abandon.
Even movie theaters in the 90s had a little arcade in the front lobby. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they were so big because it was such a money grab for people. It was such a quick way, before you go in to kill time or after the movie theater, I'm going to play a quick game of this. That's just all gone away because of where technology's gone. So, Nick, I agree with you. I could see a VR experience where you basically walk into a VR arcade and you get to do the same thing that you did in person, but now it's a VR experience. The question, and to your point, I agree, what is that content going to be when you walk into it? It's the first step to create that environment, but what content are you really bringing to the table once you're inside? And I think that's got to be focused. And are we going to see game developers now develop games for a VR experience, like a VR in a VR, or like some Inception level stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Not yet.
But like,
Not
no,
yet.
right.
Too early.
I'm dreaming, right? But I think that's got to be the key there. And I think a midterm strategy is keep the arcades alive for now, but shift your demographic and shift your focus.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about what you're looking at through a VR screen, right? You've got a screen that's an inch from your face, right? So you're already getting the screen door effect, even with high resolution screens where you can see the pixels, right? So now you're talking about viewing something from a distance, right? An arcade machine with a game on that machine at an angle or whatever, that's going to be even lower resolution. That's where arcade games, I think, would thrive. Classic arcade games, because you don't need that high resolution. But you're not going to see, Elden Ring, their upcoming game, in 4K in VR. It can't happen. But in any case, it's an interesting conversation, and maybe not the direction that they're going to take it in. Bruno, I will tell you that in the 10 or 15 minutes we've had this conversation, your NFT has increased in value from $1 to $3.50. Tree fitty.
What?
Yep.
What?
Adam saying, listen here, Loch Ness Monster.
Oh.
You're going places, man. That's like 250% growth.
That is,
Stonks.
and you can't ask for a better growth in 15 minutes, really, unless you've got Viagra. Wow.
Can we just change the title of episode 89 to Bruno and Fuego? Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Bruno and Fuego. Boom, shakalaka. That's it.
I've got that on here too, but we'll save that for another time.
That's true. Oh my goodness, guys. Well, I will tell you.
Oh my God, he's on X Games mode.
Oh man. Well, I mean, speaking of Bruno, since it's the Bruno show, I guess that's the best way to talk about our sponsor, Pierce Unlimited, because look at this mug. Look at this guy right here. That's Bruno, multimedia specialist at Pierce Unlimited. And yeah, they've got all sorts of great content there, or rather content creation in terms of marketing media that works and bespoke design to power your business. Stop on by pierceunlimited.com today. Get your free quote. They got great stuff, motion graphics. We're talking video production, even podcast production packages. It's all waiting for you. So get you some, because if you ain't got you some, then you ain't got you none. That's what I always say. Whatever that means. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Well, I got to tell you, we have a great website that you can check out too. If you're not a part of the website, you're missing tons of content. Like, we have more content for you other than our weekly podcast, and it's awesome. Just go to quitthebuild.com. You'll be greeted with a great homepage there where you can check out some blog articles, see the latest and greatest that we have going on. There is an awesome article on there that Nick just put out regarding Velocity Noodle, a new indie spotlight. We like to do that occasionally, and we have tons of other stuff coming down the pipeline. You can check all of that content out if you go over to our community page. That's where we have all of the links to our socials like TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we even have a Discord where you can go and chat with us. And Terry's in the Discord. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got, right, for the website.
I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty hyped that we have the Tricks commercial is what you see when you go on the community page.
They both look high AF. They really do. They look like it's like midnight and they're like,
man.
What can we eat, man? Let's get some tricks. I got some for you. Here you go. I don't know why either one of them talk like
Did
that.
you just turn into John C. Reilly? Like,
yeah.
Half like Kermit the Frog, half,
a little bit, okay?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Man.
That was the first time I ever tried that, so.
By the way, Mr. Grove Games has the name of our next podcast, Bruno After Dark.
God. Yeah, there we go.
Ooh.
Ooh, there you go. Oh, that's how you're going to take us out, right, Bruno?
That's right. Well, thanks so much for listening. For Nick and Brad, I'm Bruno.
For Bruno and Brad, I'm Nick.
And for Bruno and Nick, I'm Brad.
Peace out. What it do?
Bing bong.